You hear a lot of talk, particularly during confirmation cycles for the court, about preserving the legitimacy of the Supreme Court. What do you think about that kind of a question, and what really, in your view, preserves the legitimacy of our court in this country?
First, I have no idea what they're talking about. I think what preserves all of our legitimacy, and it's what we were talking about with Greg Coleman, that we do our jobs honestly, we do it with integrity, we do it with an ethical foundation, a moral foundation. We follow the law, we live up to the oaths that we take.
That broken down sack of corruption, dishonesty, and greed, which some people call Clarence Thomas, wants you to believe that the Supreme Court is moral and ethical and worthy of your respect. But he's not convincing anyone, because public opinion of the Supreme Court is at like an all-time low, and I think you all know why. There's been amazing investigations into the corruption of multiple members of the court, no more so than Clarence Thomas, and people know what they're doing, they know what they're getting away with, and they have no respect for the body. But that doesn't mean that the body of the SCOTUS cannot be saved, can't be reformed. Progressives have been calling for it for many years, and it's gotten so bad that even President Joe Biden is now calling for major reforms. He put out an op-ed in the Washington Post, "My plan to reform the Supreme Court and ensure no president is above the law." And it's pretty simple. Here's 3 plans. First, I'm calling for a constitutional amendment called the "No One Is Above the Law" amendment. It would make clear that there is no immunity for crimes a former president committed while in office. I share our founders' belief that the president's power is limited, not absolute. We are a nation of laws, not of kings or dictators. And I think pretty much everyone should be able to agree with that, particularly if you are a conservative who believes that you are anti-elite. You cannot maintain that if you believe we should have a king.
A storm is tearing up the digital media industry. Only our audience can save us in these difficult times. Help us reach our goal of 100,000 new members at tyt.com/team.
Second, we have had term limits for presidents for nearly 75 years. We should have the same for Supreme Court justices. The United States is the only major constitutional democracy that gives lifetime seats to its high court. I support a system in which the president would appoint a justice every 2 years to spend 18 years in active service on the Supreme Court. This is effectively the overall structure of reform that the Damage Report has been pushing for a number of years. There's a great breakdown of some aspects of this in an old episode of John Oliver that you can see, and we've talked about it multiple times. Third, Joe Biden says, "I'm calling for a binding code of conduct for the Supreme Court. This is common sense. The court's current voluntary ethics code is weak and self-enforced. Justices should be required to disclose gifts, refrain from public political activity, and recuse themselves from cases in which they or their spouses have financial or other conflicts of interest. Every other federal judge is bound by an enforceable code of conduct, and there's no reason for the Supreme Court to be exempt." I agree with all 3 aspects of this. Now, I know a lot of people might want to go farther than this, but I think that this would do a lot of work and get us a long way towards recovering both the reputation of SCOTUS, but also what we need the SCOTUS to be, and that it very much is not. Francesca, what do you think of these proposals? Should he go farther? Are you surprised that he's doing this at all?
I am actually a little surprised, and it makes me feel like I'm going to now focus on the presidency rather than the campaigning line from Joe Biden was a sincere one. And if this is the kind of presidency he wants to, finish out, I am so here for it. I don't have anywhere else to go, but I'm excited for that. There's 2 things in this, right? One of them obviously is a constitutional amendment basically about himself, about presidents, saying, no, we are not immune from criminal prosecution, and we are not above the law. And I think that's incredible and flies in the face of what the right has been telling us for years now, which is that this is the Biden crime family that, despite him being half asleep and half dead, or maybe dead this whole time, has been systematically locking up his opponents and wants to throw Donald Trump in jail, even though he has not been able to do that yet. So there's that. My question is, in terms of the Supreme Court, which I think the meatier part of this, the more important, well, both are really important, is how do we implement this? How does the ethics code come to be? Because calling for a constitutional amendment is huge, right? If you ask the Senate to put that to a vote, or you have to draft, or they draft it, I'm not, right? Constitutional amendments are not easy to pass. And so I am curious about the whole process for both of these things. It seems like there's something concrete when it comes to "No One Is Above the Law" amendment, but less so when it comes to the Supreme Court.
Yeah, it's obviously complicated, and it would come down to the actual wording. But I think that a prerequisite for that is having a national conversation and not having it just be those of us on the sort of political outside advocating for things that need to happen. You now have the insider of the insider saying that it needs to happen. And I just want to close with this. This is a Fox News poll, by the way. We can jump ahead to graphic 6. Limiting US Supreme Court justices to 18-year terms, when you ask people, 78% of America supports it. That is 12 points higher than it was just 2 years prior.
Jeez.
Which means that people both support this and they're paying attention to what the Supreme Court is getting up to. Thanks for watching our video. Did you know that you can support our show by becoming a subscriber? Just click the subscribe button and also ring the bell so that you get notifications when we're live or when we post new content.